On today's show, we've got a mailbag. You ask, we answer. Been a while since we do this, and there's some great questions that we're going to get to.
And we'll look ahead to both Ottawa Senators games in California up against the LA Kings and Anaheim Ducks.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Today is Friday, November 29th, and Pilsy, the Ottawa Senators jet lag is being flushed out of their system. It's a late afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern time practice today, so look for Twitter at Sens Central for any updates. But how are you feeling going into a back-to-back? First time in a while the Sens have played consecutive days.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird coming off that San Jose win, Ross, because first, that's obviously local time. It's not late, but it's if you've just flown to Cali the day before, it feels like a later game. And then you've got two afternoon games, and LA actually is playing this afternoon, and then they're going to be playing tomorrow afternoon as well. So they have early games, two back-to-back matinees, which is kind of weird as well. But I'm in a weird spot because the Ottawa Senators get the win up against the San Jose Sharks, but oh my God, was it not a good way to get a win? But we'll take it. But going up against this LA Kings team that is very good defensively, we'll get into it with Locked On Kings host Eddie Garcia, who joins us later in the show. If they had a hard time getting puck possession and shots on a San Jose Sharks team, it could be some slow-moving shots in offensive-wise up against the LA Kings.
Well, those two teams, the next two opponents for Ottawa, are playing this afternoon. So a little pre-scout is in the cards for my afternoon. And I know that Sens fans are intrigued with the possibility of extending a streak. They've now won back-to-back games after winless in 5. So it's the inconsistently consistent Ottawa Senators so far this season. I think I flipped that, but it would be par for the course with how the Sens played. Yes, they're consistently inconsistent. Sure. They're not inconsistently consistent.
Can you be inconsistently consistent?
No.
I think that's an oxymoron.
It definitely is.
Yep.
It sounds good, though. So, the Ottawa Senators' first test is their final of a 2-game season series against the LA Kings. You'll remember back to Canadian Thanksgiving, that wild and wacky 8-7 victory where Anton Forsberg and Mads Søgaard split the crease. That's when Linus Ullmark was dealing with the strain. Do you go to him on Saturday in LA or save him for the second half of the back-to-back?
Bless you. If you're watching on YouTube, Ross got out of that question right before a huge sneeze. Pro's pro. Even got the mute on time there. Look, for me, Ross, I don't like this. Shouldn't even be a discussion for me. This is the easiest slam dunk. Oh, another sneeze. Boom. Easiest slam dunk choice for me. It's gotta be Linus Ullmark, because before, when we were deciding, okay, who do you start for the Sharks game, there was two lines of thought. It's all right. Do you ride the hot hand? Bless you again. In Anton Forsberg, who came off a win in Calgary. Or do you go to your number one guy and get him rolling? Well, in this case, Linus Ullmark is the hot hand. He played a great game in San Jose, arguably stole them that win. Even our friend Mike Kelly has an advanced analytics stat for stealing a win by a goalie. And he's your number one guy. So why not ride the hot hand and keep your number one guy going, especially Ross, since it's a back-to-back. Forsberg's going to get that start against Anaheim anyways. So if they go to Forsberg, I won't understand that. Not that it's like a groundbreaking, terrible move to go to Forsberg instead, but for me, the choice is clear. My guy, 35, Linus Ullmark, get him in up against the LA Kings.
How many regulation losses do you think Linus Ullmark has against LA in 7 career games?
Bless you again.
This segment is brought to you by Sneezes, and if you're listening, you're welcome. You haven't heard a single one.
Oh, yeah, we need a Kleenex sponsorship. I don't know. And I'm not that you know what? I know we talk about the records up against other teams, but with Western teams, I don't buy too much into it because it's like you said, it's a 7-game sample size. So
answer the question.
2.
0. Linus Ullmark is 4-0-3 lifetime against the LA Kings, 911 save percentage. Against Anaheim, he's 3-2-1. So there you go.
Oh, wait, no, that's good. Okay, I thought you said regulation wins.
No, losses.
Oh, proving my point even more. Thank you, sir.
So it went from not mattering to mattering a lot.
I'll decide whether it matters or not, Ross, depending on what take I'm deciding to have.
This is awesome. This is a great Friday opening segment, Pilsy. We are absolutely buzzing. Look, Linus Ullmark coming off his best performance. I think that was even better than the home opener. Like, he had a few flurries in the home opener where he made big saves in the most notably in the third period against Florida when it was a 1-goal game. But they lose that game probably like LA lost against San Jose just last week, 7-2. That's probably the score if Linus Ullmark isn't on his game. So I'll agree with you, but I also would understand if their thought process is, hey, on the second half of back-to-back, we might be a little bit tougher to get our legs, even though the travel is with a bus. I'm pretty sure they stay in the same hotel. That's unconfirmed, but you're literally going down the street. It's like playing in Canada one day and Orleans the next. However, Anton Forsberg, I just also would like to see him get into like a couple games here and there. He hasn't played in a little while now. Well, since Monday.
No. Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be almost a full week. But yeah, as a backup, you got to be used to that. Hey, his career against Anaheim, though, he's 0-4. So 0-4-0 against Anaheim, and he's 1-2.
Well, do you have them up? What's the flip then? What's Linus Ullmark's record up against Anaheim and Forsberg's up against LA?
3-2-1 Ullmark against Anaheim with a 927 save percentage.
Jeez.
And Forsberg against LA is a 908 save percentage, 1-2-0. Okay. So he's he didn't get the decision in the game against LA.
Sogard got it, which is wild.
That was wild. That's the wildest game we'll see all year. I have no doubt about that. But look, we'll see. Look, Anaheim's a scrappy team. They're a team that I like to bet on when they're plus 200 or plus 180 because they're scrappy. They've got young talent that can pop off. This Leo Carlson kid is the real deal. And Lucas Dostal is like one of my favorite young goalies to watch in the league. The only question is, will he get the start? If not, though, John Gibson's got a ton to play for. It looks like finally he's been in trade rumors for like longer than Jacob Chychrun at this point. And it's like, this could finally be the year where he moves on to a different team. Yeah, he is playing well. And they've got some vets in there. Now, are they impactful? Maybe not so much, but Radko Gudas and Brady Tkachuk have had something going for like 5 years now. So I'm excited to see that matchup. Hilarious that Radko Gudas is the captain of the Anaheim Ducks. But that's neither here nor there. The LA Kings are going to be a much tougher test. They held the Winnipeg Jets to 13, if not 14, one of the two shots on goal in their game on Thursday night. So now you're looking, Wednesday night. So now you're looking at this could be their third game in 4 nights. And you think they probably had a nice big turkey dinner in between. So hopefully Ottawa can catch LA here, maybe not at their best. Because when they are at their best, they've got shooters, Kevin Fiala and Adrian Kempe. Both of them torched the Sens in that game in Canadian Thanksgiving. You've got Alex Laferriere, who Eddie Garcia will get into more, who's really stepped up, and the ageless wonder, Anze Kopitar. I know Sens fans are wondering about Brant Clark, good Ottawa boy. We'll ask Eddie about that later on in the show. But for the Ottawa Senators, it's about them, and it's about how they can be better than they were against San Jose. I don't think that's hard to do. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the Sens will play better than they did on Wednesday.
As long as the Kings don't play better than they did up against the Winnipeg Jets, Ross, because holding the Jets to 13 shots is incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Look, Ottawa and LA, there's quite a bit together with these teams in terms of a lack of consistency and inconsistent goaltending so far this season for LA. Like, you look up and down their lineup and they've got guys who are contributing at over a point per game. Kopitar with 27 points going into Friday's game against the Ducks. Kempe is at 23 points. And they've got Alex Laferriere at 9 goals on the season. Yep. But in goal, they don't have a single goalie with an above 900 save percentage. Kemper's at 899. Phoenix Copley's at 833, albeit in just one appearance, 27 minutes of action. And David Riddick is at an 885. However, he has played a lot better at home. So,
but look at the goals against, Ross, and that's what we kind of get into with Eddie as well. Like, just because they're not saving a lot of pucks doesn't mean they're allowing a lot of goals.
So, key to victory, pucks on net. That's the key to victory for the Ottawa Senators. Their power play finally produced a little bit on the road. They went 1 for 2 against San Jose. I'd like to see that continue, but just pepper them. And I know that the Sens are going to be eager to get out on the ice after only one shot on goal in the third period, albeit it went in. However, get double-digit shots in the first period. Don't play on your heels. That Staples Center, crypto, whatever you want to call it, where they play in LA, that can be a sleepy atmosphere. That is not a good building. I saw Winnipeg Jets media that were there were posting because it was Hockey Fights Cancer Night. So they had all the like towels or something on the seats, and they showed it during the game, and it highlights all the empty seats. It's all the white towels. And it was because Winnipeg always gets dogged for attendance. So they're like, hey, it's dressed like a seat night in LA. So if you can get on them early and really lullaby the crowd to sleep, you can really take advantage of that. And that's what I'm hoping Ottawa does, whether it's Ullmark or Forsberg. It's on the 12 forwards, the 6 defensemen in the lineup to produce. And I have an optimistic angle at this because even though they played like crap on Wednesday, the fact that they got a win not at their best, hopefully that gives confidence to the team where it's like, hey, if we are playing our best, there's no reason why we can't go 2-0 this weekend.
That's what you hope for. Yeah, exactly, Ross. And I know we're not doing a traditional game day preview, but I'll do a locked on player for the weekend, Ross.
Oh, weekend locked on player.
For the weekend, Shane Pinto has got to get going here. I mean, Ross, I'm looking at his game logs. 9 straight games without a single point. He's sitting on 1 goal and 3 assists for the year. Like, to put it into perspective, he's tied in points with Zach McEwen and Noah Gregor.
Well, no, Tyler Kleven has the same amount of goals.
Yeah. I mean, that puts it into perspective as well. So, like, Shane Pinto's got to get things going here because that third line, anyone that's on that third line has been anchored down and not doing anything. So that's the guy I'm going to be locked on to get things moving here. I know he had his injury. We're still not sure what it was, but I think it's been enough time where if he has had the injury, either he's learning how to manage it or he should be healthy from it by now. But again, no clue what that is, so can't really make a full call on that.
Okay, I'll just go with Adam Gaudette as my locked on player because I want to see this great story continue. And on yesterday's show, we dove into the journey of Adam Gaudette. So if you missed that, go check it out wherever you get podcasts. There is a mailbag question coming up about Shane Pinto. There's trade questions already. We're past U.S. Thanksgiving now. We'll get to that and all of your great mailbag questions that were in the comments of yesterday's episode on YouTube. Then we'll wrap up today's show with a fantastic conversation. Eddie Garcia, I'm not just saying it, he is one of the best Locked On NHL hosts we have on the channel. So I hope you enjoy that conversation. It's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Built Rewards. Public service announcement for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of Built, you're about to thank me. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through Built. You don't even need to check with your landlord to start earning points that you can use towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. So let me break it down for you guys. There's no cost to join Built. And as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and on your everyday spending. Built can be transferred to your favorite hotel and airlines, 500 airlines, and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your Built points towards. And points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only Built members can access. So if you're not earning points on paying your rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl. That's joinbilt.com/lockedon. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnhl to start earning points on your rent payments today. Check it out, guys. Built Rewards.
Today is also brought to you by Gametime. You want last-minute tickets to one of the games this weekend? Gametime is the place to go. Gametime is wherever I go whenever I need tickets to live events. I got my tickets to the LA Kings Ottawa Senators game earlier this year on Gametime. I love how Gametime has Gametime picks. They filter out the fluff and only show you incredible deals on tickets that make sense for you. Also, turn in all-in pricing. That way there's no surprise fees at checkout. Get panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy. Gametime is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Pillsy, gearing up for an awesome weekend of Sens hockey. The Ottawa Senators LA Kings game starts at 7 o'clock Eastern. Always love when the West Coast games are at a reasonable time on a Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. And then on Sunday, it is an 8 o'clock Eastern start. So the Ottawa Senators fan base won't have to battle the alarm clock on Monday morning. It's a very reasonable time. And that means a 7-day grind for us here at LOSP. So make sure to subscribe. We will have the postcast for you after both games this weekend. Pillsy and I will get you through tomorrow's game, and then Pillsy, Martian, and I will get you on Sunday. Pillsy, that means that this week we do 9 podcasts. We are not kidding around when we say we're your team every day.
That's it? Just 9?
That's it.
Easy.
It's easy pickings. Well, it's easy when we get great citizens, when we have great questions. We haven't done a mailbag in too long. Like, we do it on the Patreon every once in a while as well, but I do love getting the opinions and questions, whether it's from the chat on the postcast or in this case on the podcast, where we can dive into some topics. So we've taken a look at this, and we'll start with Maria, who says, happy Thursday from the UK. As yesterday you mentioned, American Thanksgiving only applies to them in the States. Thursday. In all seriousness, what's happening with Pinto lately? He's been almost invisible.
I got the same question. And I always like going into these blind, so I have no research or answers prepared. I guess kind of what we talked about is maybe there's some lingering concerns from whatever injury he had, but I can't put it all on Pinto, Ross, because any line mate that's been on the third line, like the third line is the graveyard line for this team. Like, just no one's been able to get it going on that third line whatsoever. So hopefully Noah Gregor getting back into the lineup, that'll add a little bit more speed and hopefully some offensive flair. And Michael Amadio's got to figure it out too. I'm not sure if he's going to be on that third line or not. They've kind of got a injection of youth with Cole Reinhardt being put on that line, and he did get his first NHL goal, but Pinto has to be the guy that everything revolves around, and if he's not going on that third line, it makes sense that no one else is. So I don't know what's happening, but we got to see something here.
The analytics earlier on in the year showed a lot of promise for Pinto. Like, the expected goals percentage when he was on the ice was always above 50%. It was above 50% in 7 of his first 8 games this season. But recently, it hasn't only been tipped the other way. There's one against Edmonton. It was 24%. Vancouver, 21%. And against San Jose, 11.8% of the expected goals. So it's trending in the wrong direction. We love Shane Pinto as a player. We love him as a personality. And we know that there is a lot of talent in that player. So that's why it's a question. It's like, where did the 20 goals go? Where did the elite defensive aspect of his game go? And it's not like he's starting a lot in the defensive zone. Only 4 defensive starts in each of the last 2 games, starting a lot on the fly. I don't know how that's incorporated to everything, but he had a total of 7 starts at whistles after last game and 13 on the fly. So it seems like Travis Green Maybe they're trying to keep him out of the faceoff dot a little bit more. He did take 8 faceoffs, went 50% of his draws. He is inching back up to 50% after having a really tough time at the start of the season in the dot. But my answer is as good as your question, Maria, which is I just don't know. And we hope that knowing that the talent is there and having seen it at the NHL level, that there will be a rebound and maybe even an improvement to the mean of what the average of what Shane Pinto can bring is. But we know that he's still going to have that great personality. And I think that kind of bubbliness can help in times of struggles because you're not beating yourself up. At least I don't think he is, or hope that he's not, because that's where it can kind of turn into a longer drought. But we're looking for Shane Pinto to get back on the score sheet here sooner rather than later. Another question from Suzanne George. What you think has happened to Pinto's game? So that's a really popular one here. So let's go down. I'm going to save Damien's for last. That's
of course the ladies are worried about Pinto, eh?
Of course they are. All Dressed Bagel, great handle on YouTube. How do we solve the depth scoring issue? So this is more of an extension on the Shane Pinto conversation, but it goes beyond it. Look, I know David Perron, of course, we're very sympathetic to his family situation, and now he comes back, gets an injury. It's just been a tough start for David Perron, making $4 million. There's what you'd like your secondary scoring to be on this team. You look at Michael Amadio, 2 goals, missed a golden opportunity. If they lose that game against San Jose, you look back at him missing the net in the third period from a point-blank opportunity. What do you think it is? Because now you can't even call Adam Gaudette secondary scoring. They put him up on the first line.
Yeah, he's got 11 goals. He's primary scoring. Yeah, I don't know, Ross. And I guess, like, looking at it, it's a lot of new characters, right? Like, the only returning guy to that bottom 6 is Shane Pinto, and Zach McEwen. So it's a lot of new characters.
Who's in Belleville right now?
Yeah, exactly. So it's just Shane Pinto right now. I mean, Zach Ostapchuk had a bit of time last season, but
and Noah Gregor's coming back from injury, so hopefully he looks a little bit more polished in these weekend games because using your speed is going to be huge for these 2 road games.
Agreed. Yeah. And I guess you could look at new coaching staff. Travis Green has certainly implemented a much more defensive style of play than DJ Smith's teams ever were. It was more run and gun with them. So maybe it's just the fact that the bottom 6 is really trying to focus on playing a more defensive game, and that hasn't allowed them to pop off offensively. But I agree. It's certainly a problem, and it's a problem that we thought Steve Staios addressed with abundance of free agent signings in the offseason. So concerning for sure.
Definitely concerning. And it came out that Nick Cousins missed the San Jose game with an illness. So unsure. We'll see on Twitter at Sens Central. Again, the Sens practicing at 4:00 Eastern if Nick Cousins is expected to return to the lineup on Saturday. Okay, now we get into the trade discussion. Our guy, Sens Central citizen Feller Pine. If the Sens were to make a trade, who would you guys trade? And what are you looking for? What part? Are you looking to address depth scoring? Are you looking for a right shot defenseman with Artem Zub now out long term? Where do you look for a trade?
Well, Ross, I know you're chomping at the bit to answer this one once you're done sneezing, so I'll just pass it back over to you because you're on the trail of a big trade here.
Well, I was just following along with insider trading, and it feels like you look at certain teams, the New York Rangers looking to do something. The Calgary Flames, though, is where I want to look. Apparently, they want a center who can be in their program for the next 3 to 5 years or beyond. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that they're one of the teams calling the Sens because they've got centermen. And if Ridley Gregg ultimately is going to be a center in the NHL, I know he's played a lot of wing this year. Is Josh Norris the guy? Rumblings from Frank Saravelli. He's on his trade bait board at number 9 right now. I hesitate, just to start, I hesitate to make a move this early in the season. I don't touch the roster until January at the earliest. You got till March with the trade deadline. I think any team that's making a move this early in the season of that magnitude is panicked. And I don't think the Senators should send a shock of panic through the room. I think that there's plenty of time for that. Again, my stick in the sand is 25 wins before 25 losses. 50 games takes you to about early March, late February. I think that you need to be a little bit more patient. And we know that Josh Norris is so well liked in the room and that he brings energy and that he brings a shot that, frankly, a lot of teams just don't have and would love to have on their team. Every other question is about Josh Norris, particularly. Isn't that wild? Like, people are eyeing Josh Norris as the trade, but that, to me, if you are going to trade him, you cannot trade him for pennies on the dollar because of his contract. It has to be because another team really values him, sees him as a top 6 center, and you better be getting an adequate return for that dollar. So with Calgary, they've got 2 right shot defensemen that would immediately make Ottawa's decor miles better. And we know Mackenzie Weegar is an absolute star, second best defenseman in Canada for my money behind third best, because Quinn Hughes is so obviously number 1. Then it's Josh Morrissey. Then it's Mackenzie Weegar for me. And he is a stud. Obviously, he's an Ottawa boy, so we'd love to have him. But if they're not thinking about moving him, and he's also 30, right? So that's where you think Calgary, they're trying to get younger. Yep. Would that be a guy they look? Or Rasmus Anderson, who's a pending UFA, who's a big, rugged defenseman, great shot from the point. Those would be the 2 guys who, if you're looking to make a hockey trade, Norris for Rasmus Anderson, you got to have an extension, a reasonable one in place. You can't be trading for rentals. We've seen that too often, even with RFAs. This would be a UFA situation for Rasmus Anderson. So that would be the type of trade that I would be wanting Ottawa to try for.
Well, just quick correction, Ross. Rasmus Anderson actually has this year and next year.
Okay, so he's due for a contract extension this summer. So that does help, but we've also seen those come to Ottawa and leave soon after.
Yeah, and to get to the Norris stuff, it's interesting because Norris, in his deal this season, his no move clause kicks in. Now, it's not anything major. It's a 10-team no-trade list, but we know a lot of people put Canadian teams on their no-trade list, economy, multiple different things. I mean, Norris is an American guy, so maybe he's just like, hey, I tried it in Ottawa. It's not, I don't want to be in Canada. I don't know that. I'm just putting that out there. That could have a factor. And yeah, I think the Norris contract makes it difficult because I think teams see the value there, but then you got a centerman that's had multiple shoulder surgeries and you start to get a little worried there. And if I'm Calgary, like, obviously they want to acquire talent because they're in a position where they're exceeding expectations for sure. But I'm not trading Mackenzie Weegar or Rasmus Anderson when you're in a playoff spot and those 2 lead their team in points.
Yeah, they're tied for the lead in points now with 13. Tim Stützle's got, 28 points?
Totally, Ross. But if you're trying to win and get better, trading the 2 players that you have under contract that are leading your team in points, probably not the direction you're going to go if I'm Craig Conroy.
Well, it would have to be a hockey trade, right? You're going 1 for 1 and you're trying to get better in different ways. They drafted Zane Parekh, a right shot defenseman. They've got a young decor outside of those 2 guys. I don't think Calgary does it, but that's the type of value I would expect for return if Ottawa's going to take a dent out of their core pieces who are locked up long term.
Yeah. And I made my point very clear on the Vancouver postcast when the sky was falling and we were all wondering how we're going to shake this, how we're going to shake things up. I'm standing on this position, Ross. I think you don't trade any massive pieces. You got to let these players figure it out. You got a new owner, new general manager, new executive staff, Dave Poulin coming in as well. They've added analytics. They've added so much new coaching staff. You bring in multiple free agents that are from winning cultures. You acquire a Vezina winning goaltender. Like, you have to put it on the players now. They've changed everything else. And if you just say, you know what, we're going to bail you guys out. We're going to trade a core piece to shake things up and try to bring a different core piece in. I think this team has to look at it and be like, we've got all the reinforcements and help that this organization can give us. We got to figure this out. For me, I'm not doing any sort of major trade. The only trade I would be looking to do would be finding some help for the bottom 6 scoring or a rental or short-term defenseman to come in here. I'm not looking to make any moves involving Josh Norris and acquiring top 4 defensemen, in my opinion.
And you got to keep in mind, too, the Ottawa Senators don't have their 2nd-round pick next year, not this draft, next draft from the Chychrun trade. And they also are losing one of their next first 2 picks. So you're not going to be denting in to the draft capital. They do have 3 third-round picks in 2026. So that makes up for not having a fourth in either this draft or next either. So,
and the prospect pool is not good right now, Ross. So like, you can't be trying to use draft picks and prospects to acquire NHL talent that you're hoping works out, in my opinion.
Joey Fife says that on the trade talk with Josh Norris, he's saying he thinks it would be selling low coming off repeated injuries. And he mentions that Batherson, albeit a much different injury, took a full year to get back to where we thought he would be a year before. I like that point there from Fife. All right, two more on that punt. Our guy Hot Lunch says, would you trade Norris for Erik Karlsson, 50% retain? That ship has sailed. The only way Erik Karlsson, I believe, will come back to Ottawa in terms of Ottawa's side of things is if he's ever bought out or a free agent and he wants to be a 6'7" defenseman who can help on the power play. That ship has sailed. I'm very sturdy in my stance on that. So no Hot Lunch. That is a very much an NHL 25. Turn on the video game if you want that trade. Mathieu Larocque, another Sens Central citizen, says, would you trade Norris to the Pens to get Karlsson back? We are having the same question there. I understand the nostalgia, especially with the pizza line coming back soon, but that ain't happening. Appreciate the questions. We've got a couple more we'll get to later on in another episode of Locked On Senators. Final question, though, from Damian Smith. In celebration of the undefeated Lily Levitan, 2-0 since Lily came, which Ottawa Senator would I trust most to babysit my kid?
Okay, I like that. A little different. I don't know. Do you have an answer lined up, Ross? I'll take a look at the list here and try to make a decision.
There's two guys. I go with the two vets who have the most kids. It's probably going to be Nick Jensen, though. I think he's got 3 kids. Apparently, he's the guy who I remember they had the scoreboard thing around Thanksgiving. It's like who would make the best Thanksgiving dinner, and everyone was like Nick Jensen. He's just got all of his stuff together. Like he's dialed in. So I think that's probably my number one. And Claude Giroux's got 3 kids, so he's also got a palace and a sick, like you see on his Instagram or his wife's, where it's like they got a basketball court in the backyard. They've got all the fixins. I think they'd have a good
playing basketball.
Yeah, well, she's in the 99th percentile in height, so yeah, WNBA future superstar.
That's awesome.
So yeah, those are my 2 answers.
Great answers, Ross. I'll go in a different direction, just based on the age of your child. You know who I think would be a great babysitter for them? Shane Pinto. Get the giggles going. He's just giggling and the baby's just giggling and they're just having a complete time, not even laughing at anything, just giggling back and forth. So I'll go with Shane Pinto.
They speak the same language for sure. Great question, Damian. Appreciate that. Great conversation coming up with Eddie Garcia. Again, make sure to subscribe to the podcast everywhere you get yours, including on YouTube, where we will have the postcast both Saturday and Sunday. Great conversation coming up next. We'll wrap up with some final thoughts. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, like you think your Bears are going to come back on Thanksgiving dinner, but then they pull a boneheaded play and get their coach fired for the first time in season in franchise history, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Check it out today, guys. FanDuel.com.
All right, Pilsy, we now welcome on the host of the Locked On LA Kings podcast. It is Eddie Garcia, one of my favorites on the Locked On Network. Eddie, what's up, man? Welcome back to the show.
Ross, I would say the exact same thing, man. I'm envious of you guys. You guys do a great show. I see the guests you guys get, and I'm just blown away. So always fun to talk to you guys and appreciate the support you've given me every now and then. Appreciate that. Good to be on with you.
And we'll leave the Byfield-Stützle debate to the side. I remember we had that out on a couple of years ago on your show. People were very passionate in the replies. But besides that, we saw an amazing game, if you like, goals earlier this season between the two teams. How has the LA Kings season developed since the early going?
It has been up and down. a lot of good, but a lot of head scratching as well. And no greater example than the last 2 games. 2 games ago, they go to San Jose, play a Sharks team. I know, young and improving, I suppose. And they've got some, obviously some marquee young talent, but, not a great team. And it's tied 2-2 going into the third. And the Kings just collapse in the first 3 minutes. They allow 3 goals in less than 3 minutes. They allow 5 goals in the third. And they lose 7-2. And, the Kings fans are like, this team is garbage. They come back 2 nights later at home against Winnipeg and dominated the Jets. Like, they were clearly the better team in every way. And we're like, this team is, I guess, pretty good, but that's the way it's been all year for them. They'll have a couple of nice wins and then they'll have a couple of head scratching losses, so there's been good. I guess they've kind of lived up to expectations. I thought they were a bubble playoff team. The preseason and the way the younger guys and the guys that they brought in from outside the organization had kind of meshed gave me a little bit of hope. I'm like, okay, I think this is a playoff team. But, it's like, are they going to actually get out of the first round this year? It's been 3 in a row out in the first round. And then before that, a couple years before that, they lost the first round. They haven't won a playoff series since the 2014 Stanley Cup title.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like, we're looking for a little more than just getting in the playoffs. But right now it's kind of, when you're inconsistent, are you going to win a playoff series when you're inconsistent? They look great one night, not so great the next. So look, they've been in the top 3 in the Pacific pretty much all year. Can't really complain too much about that. But at the same time, we just want to see some consistency out of this team. They haven't won 3 in a row all year. The good news is they've only lost 3 in a row once, and 2 of those were overtime losses. So that's the Kings this year. Good, bad, up and down. Sometimes look great, sometimes look terrible. Just need some consistency from this team.
Eddie, the one thing that is consistent with the LA Kings, though, is Anze Kopitar. Every single year, I'm like, okay, this is the year he's going to fall off. He's 37 years old. He doesn't always have top-end talent surrounding him, but he just continues to keep it going. I mean, he leads the team in points, 27 points in 23 games. What is it about Kopitar that is allowing him to just age like a fine wine?
Yeah, it's a great question. And he's amazing. And we as Kings fans really do wonder, does he get the love, on the East Coast? Does he get the love north of the border? I hope he does. Maybe,
like, people are aware of his game, but I feel like he's not a guy that is in the top echelon of conversations in Canada, even though, why shouldn't he be?
Yeah, and like, he was kind of the West Coast Patrice Bergeron is kind of how we thought of him. And and look, Bergeron playing in Boston and being Canadian and all that, I think he probably got a little more love. And then obviously the Selkies speak for themselves, but Kopi is, I feel very confident in saying, the greatest LA King of all time. And I realize 99 wore a King sweater, but we're talking, he's an Edmonton Oilers still. I know what he did for LA. And I know what he did for hockey in, non-traditional markets, and that can never be understated. But as far as just an LA King drafted, developed, and whole career, it looks like certainly is going to be here. I think he's the greatest LA King of all time. And you're right. He's still getting it done. He's still doing it on both ends of the ice. Just doesn't say much, but does say a lot as far as his actions and how he carries himself, and just honestly a gentleman on and off the ice. Just he's a wonderful ambassador for this franchise, but as you said, still getting it done. And he's got 1 more year left on his contract. He hasn't said that next year will be his final season, but he's kind of hinted that he wouldn't mind playing out his contract and kind of walking away, maybe not on top of his game, but you know what I'm saying, at a high level,
like Bergeron did.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see. I think where the team is at is going to dictate a lot whether he wants to maybe play another year or 2 after that. But yeah, he's amazing. He's just a great representative of the organization and still getting it done on the ice. It's amazing.
And he's getting it done on the power play as well. Leads the team in power play points with 10. This, by the way, all 1 game ahead of Ottawa. We're not doing lines because the LA Kings are playing this afternoon against the Anaheim Ducks. Little pre-scout for us because we've got you guys on Saturday and Anaheim on Sunday. So we'll be seeing our next two opponents here. But I'm going back because I was in the building in Ottawa for that Sens Kings 8-7 game on Canadian Thanksgiving. And the first thing that jumped out to me was the flanks on the power play, having Adrian Kempe on one side, Kevin Fiala on the other. I'm expecting this power play to click at a pretty good pace, but they're only at 16% on the season, down in the 20s in the National Hockey League. Is that a surprise for Kings fans? And how do you think they can step up at special teams?
It's been a disappointment for Kings fans, I can tell you that. From a team standpoint, that's absolutely the biggest. I mean, we talk about the consistency, but as far as an aspect of their game, the power play has not performed up to expectations. You know, Jim Hiller, who's in his first year as a full-time NHL coach, we were told he was going to be an innovative guy, a guy who thought outside the box. Well, he's using 5 forwards on the number 1 power play unit. He's been doing that now for the last 3 games, and they've had a couple of power play goals. So it looks like maybe that has been something that has sparked him, that is getting him going. Adrian Kempe, definitely their best finisher on the power play, but certainly the passing and then the flow of it looks a lot better of late. It does kind of screw up your lines a little bit, right? After you have a power play and you've got 5 forwards out there for a couple of shifts. So there's that, but they were kind of in desperation mode to really get something going with that. And so it's looked better, I'd say, last 3 or 4 games when they've switched to this. And it's pretty interesting seeing the 5 forwards out there on the number 1 power play unit.
We'll look for that, but that makes me think right away, what's going on with Brandt Clarke? Good Ottawa boy. We're obviously following his career. He's not on the top power play anymore. I mean, he was snapping around. I think he had 3 assists when he came to Ottawa. He's up to 15 points so far this season. What's it looking like for the Kings' top 10 pick here who's trying to find his footing in the NHL?
He's looked pretty good, started really strong. I think he was like a point per game player for like the first 12 games or so, something like that. Then cooled off a little bit, but he's starting to pick it back up again. As Kings fans, we haven't seen a guy like Brandt Clarke in a long time. And even Drew Doughty's not that type of guy. Like Clarke will go end to end a couple times a game. Doughty will get it to the blue line, but then he usually give it to somebody else to do the rest of the work. So for Clarke to go and do the things he does, and like I said, go end to end, he's kind of he's not a small guy. He's not a Quinn Hughes, quickness, Cale Makar, but he's kind of a long strider and he's got a long reach, but he's got a good stride and he can skate through people. So it's been a lot of fun seeing him develop. I certainly think he can only get better. One thing he does that I love, his head's constantly up and he's always looking to just flip it on net. And he can do it right when somebody's kind of getting in that good position and time it to where it turns it into a dangerous play. And it doesn't look like he's doing much of anything. It's just a little flip with his wrist and it gets in there. And suddenly, guys are scrambling for a loose puck and the goalie for some reason can't corral it. But he's really good at knowing when to do that. It's a lot of fun to watch, but I think we're really encouraged by him. He's been good defensively. There you go.
That's his brother here. We're getting there.
Yeah. I've seen this
there
clip. This is good. This is good stuff. Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm sure he's going to be excited to play against the Sens. I don't think we're going to see an 8-7 overtime game this time. But
9-8,
no. Well, no. One thing I will say, the Kings have been consistent at. They've been really good defensively 5-on-5. But no, Brandt's been coming along. I love his game. I think he should only get better. And he is running the second power play unit. But yeah, he'll get his ice time. It was funny. Adrian Kempe took a penalty the other day, and Jim Hiller put him out as the forward to kill a penalty. So
wow.
So they're going
5 forwards on the power play and 3 defensemen on the PK.
For that instance, they did. Yeah, it was very interesting. So he's a guy. He'll change things up. He'll flip the lines all around, which he did against Winnipeg, and it worked great. So he's a guy that's not afraid to do different things, which is pretty cool.
You mentioned that this team's been really good defensively 5-on-5, Eddie. And when I'm looking at Ottawa Senators opponents, I always like to organize their stats on NHL.com and try to find some outliers for each team. And the one that really jumps out for me for the LA Kings is they are the top team when it comes to shots against per game, only allowing an average of 24 shots a game. How are they able to keep everything away from these goalies? And then you look at the goalie stats too, and it's kind of funny because David Riddick He only has an 885 save percentage, but he's sitting at a 252 goals against. And then Darcy Kemper, kind of similar, 903 and a 265 goals against. So it's not like these goalies are shutting the door. This team is just playing so well defensively that not a lot of shots and probably not a lot of high danger shots are coming in there.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Winnipeg is averaging over 30 shots on goal a game. They had 13 against the Kings. Oh. So, I think a lot of it is when they're on their game, making it really difficult. They're not doing the 1-3-1 anymore. I know that got a lot of attention last year up north of the border. They've gone to a 1-2-2, but they still make it really difficult in the neutral zone for teams to get in there and get their offense set up for the most part. They don't block a lot of shots. They'll block some, but it's not about that, as far as getting shots on net. But yeah, they've done a great job of being aggressive in the defensive zone and just not giving time and space to the other teams. And it's certainly been one of the biggest reasons why they've done what they've done so far this year. Yeah, they're not giving up a lot of shots, and just they've always kind of hung their hat on that a little bit. For the last few years, it's always. We've had kind of a revolving door in net since Jonathan Quick was no longer Jonathan Quick anymore and then moved on. But they bring in a cast of guys that are, okay. But they always seem to get it done because of the defense. So, and you even lose a guy like a Matt Roy, left in free agency this offseason, and they've still been just as good pretty much defensively. So I was going to mention, back to back for the Kings. You mentioned it, Ross, about playing the Ducks today. So you guys are going to see David Riddick in net. If you're wondering about that, the rookie Eric Portillo is going to make his NHL debut tonight against Anaheim. And Riddick has been amazing at home. He's got his goals against average at home is 1.34 and his save percentage is 935. Wow. So big save, Dave, getting it done on home ice while he's filling in for the injured Darcy Kemper. So we'll see.
Well, we love our goalies on this show, and David Riddick spent some time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Calgary Flames. Against Ottawa, he's 6-3 in his career with a 914 save percentage. For more from Eddie Garcia, you can check out Locked On LA Kings. Final question for me, Eddie. We always do a lookout player to watch on the other team. So who are you locked on to? Who's a player Sens fans should keep an eye on the LA Kings on Saturday?
Well, let me throw out a guy who probably they may not know. His name's Alex Laferriere. He's in his second year. Not Lafreniere. And yes, that can be confusing. He's a kid out of Harvard. Last year made the team totally unexpectedly, played 81 of 82 games and had 12 goals. And you're like, okay. And this year he's already got 9. So he's stepped it up and he really had a really good game against Winnipeg. So a guy you might not know about, check him out. He's a young up-and-coming player, not going to be a superstar, but looks like he's turning into a really solid NHL player, Alex Laferriere.
Well, he had 2 goals against Ottawa in that crazy game, too. Like, he was all over the ice, so great call out there, Alex Laferriere. Also, from the same draft as Lafreniere to make it even more confusing, that 2020 draft that Sens fans look back at so fondly. Eddie, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the back-to-back. And I wish you all the luck in the world tonight against the Anaheim Ducks.
Well, I appreciate that. And when you guys play the Ducks, I'll be the biggest Sens fan out there. So I really love your show, guys. You're doing a great job. You're killing it. And I love coming on the show. So thank you so much.
All right, stick taps to Eddie for joining us. And Pillsy, I just want to let everyone know who's in Ottawa and I think other markets as well. But I know at night, TSN 1200, before the Teen 1200, they used to go to Fox Sports Radio. It was JT the Brick and Ben Mahler. And Eddie Garcia, for 23 years, was the sports update guy. So if you recognize that voice like I did, you might have been listening to Late Night Teen 1200 way back in the day. Pillsy, any final thoughts heading into the weekend?
Final thoughts for me, Ross, is the Belleville Senators have back-to-back games up against the Bridgeport Islanders. Both of those games on the road, Ross. We know they had a tough time up against the Syracuse Crunch, losing 7-1. Yikes. But this is the perfect weekend to bounce back, Ross, because the Bridgeport Islanders are the bottom team in their division, 8th in the Atlantic Division in the AHL with a 5-10-3 record. So let's hope Belleville Senators can get back on track with a trip down to Bridgeport.
Absolutely. And I'll be in the building a week from now for the Belleville Sens visit to Manitoba. I'll be in the booth with David Foote. Looking forward to that. We got another great week coming up. Of course, we got the postcast for Saturday, Sunday. I already mentioned. Then the Sens are off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Not us. We got Cheryl Pounder coming on the show on Monday. We'll have a citizen for you next week as well. And if there's any guests you want to hear on Locked On Senators, you let us know, and we will do our best to make it happen. Have a great start to your weekend. We'll see you in the postcast after the Senators take on the LA Kings tomorrow night. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.